welcome back to another journal and chat with me. It's been a while since I did this, but I filmed myself when I was writing down my ideas on how to use my Hobonichi notebooks this year, and I thought, because I didn't want the video to go to waste, I thought we could talk about journaling. I could answer some questions while you watch me write down my ideas about how I will be using my journals. As always, if you want to use this video for buddy doubling, you can always mute me and put on your own music and journal along with me. Or you could journal along with me and listen to me ramble about things. Or you could just put this on as a podcast and, just listen to my voice while I answer some questions about journaling. I have my tea, I lit some candles, I have my blanket, so I'm feeling very cozy. I hope you are also in a cozy area, maybe with a cozy drink. I want this Q&A to be very cozy, so I think what I will do is I will edit this minimally. Maybe I won't even edit the voiceover, because I really want this to be like we are sitting at a coffee shop and just talking about our journals. I have a bunch of questions that I will be answering. I'm no expert in this, so I will be answering from my experiences. So, before I jump into answering questions, I want to take a moment to talk about something really important when it comes to journaling. Journaling is a personal thing, and everyone's system is different, and that's exactly how it should be, in my opinion. There is no right way to journal, and what works for one person might not work for someone else. So the key to find your system is honestly just trying different things and experimenting and figuring out what feels good for you. It's about discovering what helps you stay organized, feel inspired, and what brings you joy, clarity, depending on how you use your journal. The journaling videos you see, including mine, can give you ideas, but at the end of the day, it's all about you and your own progress. And I really want to emphasize something that I think a lot of us struggle with, including myself. It's so easy to compare your journal, especially when you see these beautiful aesthetic journals online. It's tempting to feel like your journal needs to look perfect, or somehow you're doing it wrong if it doesn't. I personally still struggle with this myself sometimes, but I think I've learned, and to be honest, I think I'm still learning, that it doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, I don't think it's supposed to be perfect. Your journal is a tool, a space that's meant to serve you, not to impress others or even yourself sometimes. So if you ever feel like your journal doesn't measure up to what you see online, try to remind yourself that your system is yours alone, and it's there to reflect your thoughts, your plans, your needs, again, depending on how you use your journal. It's okay if it's messy, and it's okay if it's not quote-unquote Instagram worthy. What matters is that it works for you and it helps you in your life. And speaking of that, actually, another thing I realized along the way is just your journaling system can change, and it's okay. It's okay if what worked for you at the start of the year doesn't feel right anymore in a few months in. Sometimes you might want to start fresh entirely with a new notebook, new system, or sometimes you just need to make adjustments to your existing system. And honestly, that's completely fine. I'm still trying to figure out what works best for me and what I like. I know I might continue to evolve, and it's okay. Journaling is a journey. It's not something set in stone, and I think it's important to give yourself that permission to change your approach as your needs and preferences change. So with that being said, I'm going to dive into some questions that I hope will inspire you to build your own system. Just remember, this is your journey, so take what resonates, and don't be afraid to adapt and change things to fit your needs, your style. I'm just talking from my experience, and I hope that it helps. There's a lot of questions. When I say a lot, I mean maybe like 15. I divided these into 3 parts, I guess. The first part is choosing a notebook for journaling and planning. And the first question is, how do you choose the perfect notebook for your journaling system? To answer this question, I think the first thing to figure out is what you actually want to do in your journal, whether that's planning, memory keeping, something else. Maybe you want to plan and memory keep in the same journal. But once you have that in mind, you can kind of start asking yourself more specific questions, like what kind of page layout works best, what type of notebook design do you prefer. So yeah, for me, this step is really important because it kind of shapes the entire journaling experience. That being said, I think it's also important to remember that there's no such thing as, again, quote-unquote, perfect journaling system. Everyone's needs are different, so I think instead of searching for the perfect notebook, think about what you want to achieve with your journals and how the features of a certain notebook can help you do that. What are the key features you look for in a notebook when it's setting up a new planning system? Size, paper quality, binding. When it comes to setting up a new planning system, there's a few things that are important to me. For me, it's essential to have enough space to write down everything I need, while still keeping the notebook portable enough to carry around. This is why I tend to gravitate towards A5 size journals, especially the ones from Japan. I love Japanese notebooks. Paper quality used to be a big deal for me when I first started bullet journaling, but my style has shifted towards a more minimalistic style over time. So now I think as long as the paper doesn't smudge like a lot or doesn't bleed, I'm pretty happy with the paper quality. I think I've always preferred bound notebooks. They provide a more comfortable writing experience to me, but the features you prioritize should align with your specific journaling habits and preferences, as always. Have you experimented with different types of notebooks? The short answer is yes, but I will, as always, ramble about this. I think I started with a normal planner in middle school, and then I transitioned to bullet journaling, which I have used on and off. I did go back to normal pre-planned planners here and there. Last year, I really embraced the bullet journaling system. I watched some very inspiring videos, and I wanted to bullet journal in a more quote-unquote serious way. I experimented with memory keeping and common placing as well last year. It was very fun. I'm kind of keeping things the same this year, but I decided to return to a pre-made planner, and I've decided on Hobonichi notebooks. If you watched my previous videos, the last two I think, you already know that, but I'm so excited to use them. But each type of notebook has its own strengths and weaknesses, so I think what you need to do is find what works for you so that this journaling journey can be a fun but also a productive one. Does the aesthetic or design of the notebook impact your productivity or motivation to use the journal? Yes, I think it significantly influences my motivation to journal. To me, having a visually pleasing cover is very important because that way I want to pick up that journal a lot more. I lean towards minimal designs because I want to avoid getting tired of my journal quickly. I know that this might not be the case for everyone, but I find that notebook cover aesthetics, I guess, can enhance my journaling experience. But in the end, as always, choosing a notebook for your personal style can boost your motivation to use it, but also you might not really care about the aesthetic design of the covers. How do you decide between using a digital journal versus a physical notebook? To me, choosing between a digital journal and a physical notebook is pretty easy. I've tried using digital planners a few times, but I always seem to revert back to paper. While digital planning has its advantages, like you don't have to print the pictures, you can just copy and paste them, you can sync your journal with your other devices, you can move things around easily. I find that I lose interest after just a few days. I personally love the tactile experience of writing with pen and paper. I hardly even open my notes app, like in real life as well. If I need to take a note, I much rather pick up a pen and a paper and just write it down rather than using my notes app. So I know that physical journaling is the better choice for me. The only digital planning tool that I use is Notion. I use it to keep track of what I'm watching, what I'm reading. I sometimes do budgeting. So like long-term tracking, I use Notion. And I also kind of use it for brain dump or content creation to write like scripts and stuff. But that's about it when it comes to digital planning. Most of it happens in a physical notebook. Sometimes a few physical notebooks for me. So yeah, like sticking with a physical notebook is better for my habits and preferences, but obviously if you find digital journaling easier, stick with that. There are some amazing digital journals online that you can purchase. How do you decide if a notebook's layout, that grid line blank, is right for your planning style? Okay, so the layout of the notebook is very important for me. I always preferred square grids. Like, even in high school, I loved using square grids. They suit my small handwriting much better than the lined ones, because with the lined ones, there is too much empty space and I don't like the look of it. And blank notebooks don't work for me. I do need that structure of a grid so that my handwriting is in line. And I think this is a reason why pre-planned journals never really stick with me until I discovered Hobonichi's square grid, which I'm, again, so excited to use. The right layout can significantly change your journaling experience. So I think it's important to find the one that you like. For me, again, it was easy because even when I'm taking notes, I do like to take notes on a square grid notebook. So find what you like the best and then try finding a journal that's similar. What role does portability play in your notebook choice, especially if you're planning on journaling on the go? Okay, portability is another very important factor for me when selecting my journal. I know I say everything is important, but it is. It's all about what you need, and to make my life easier, I tend to have a quote-unquote perfect notebook, and I try to get close to that perfect notebook in real life as possible. So there's a lot of important things for me. I need a notebook that I can easily carry around while also having enough space to write my thoughts. I ramble quite a lot, so I do need a bigger area that I can write down my thoughts. This is why I often choose A5 sizes. Currently, I'm using 2 separate notebooks, which also helps if you want more space to write. And in my brain, when I have 2 different notebooks for 2 different purposes, everything's become a lot easier for me. So I use one of my notebooks for planning that I take with me everywhere, and another one for more extensive rambling about my thoughts, my special interests, my day, anything. This year, my weeks will be my planning journal, and my cousin will be for memory keeping and commonplacing and rambling. So portability is significant for my planner, I guess, but not as crucial for my journal. I think finding that balance between portability and writing space is very important so that you are consistent with your journaling practice. How important is the quality of the paper for you, thickness and texture, when choosing a notebook? The quality of the paper is something that I have evolved over the years, I guess. A few years ago, I would have said that thick paper was the most important thing in a notebook because I was bullet journaling and I wanted to use all sorts of pens and markers without worrying about ghosting, which was not the most realistic thing for me. But as my style became more minimal, I realized that as long as the paper doesn't bleed through, I'm fine with thinner pages. Last year I used Stology notebook, and if you don't know about Stology, they have very thin pages. And I knew that it would ghost, but the ghosting didn't bother me at all. In fact, I find it somewhat aesthetic. Now I honestly just care about the bleeding. If it doesn't bleed, I'm fine. I'm also quite impatient, so I don't like to wait a lot before closing the notebook or moving on to the next page. So I guess unless it doesn't bleed and doesn't smudge too much, we're fine. Again, this is your preference, so find what you like and kind of go with that. If you want to use more markers, maybe find something thicker if you care about ghosting. If you don't, thinner papers shouldn't be a problem. Do you prefer pre-designed planners or creating your own layouts from scratch in a blank notebook? Okay, this question is still a bit challenging for me to answer. Given that aesthetics are crucial for me, I often preferred creating my own layouts. However, I realized that this process can be time-consuming. As my style has become more minimal, Ubuntu appealed to me this year because the layout is pretty similar to how I bullet journal, but also I appreciate that I don't have to start from scratch and do everything myself. And the design is minimal enough for me to still add some decorations and my own twist to the notebook, I guess. But yeah, I think choosing between a pre-designed planner and creating your own bullet journal depends on how much time and effort you are willing to invest in it. How do you balance aesthetics and functionality when picking a notebook? Okay, so I personally gravitate towards minimal designs for covers, so I don't really struggle with this too much. Like a solid color cover on a bound notebook with dot grid is enough for me. The challenge for me is usually maintaining this balance throughout my journal, which we will discuss later. But I think finding the right combination of aesthetics and functionality can be a bit hard if you want like this super amazing design with a lot of functionality, which I think creating a bullet journal becomes a better option, because at least the only thing that you want is the cover, and then you can kind of design the inside however you like. But if you want a pre-planned planner, I think you have to either look for it for a very long time or just make some changes on what you want in your journal, aesthetically, I guess. What do you consider when choosing between a bound notebook, spiral notebook, or a disc-bound system? Okay, so my preference among notebook types has been quite clear. I tried all three, and I think I prefer bound notebooks. Spiral notebooks feel uncomfortable for me to write on. I don't like it. Even in the video, I'm using a spiral notebook, and you can kind of see that I keep like moving my hand away from the spirals, and it's just not a very comfortable writing position for me. And I find disc bound or ring planners, I guess, to be too flexible. I like having a set of structure for my tasks and my events. And I think, now that I'm thinking about it, this might explain why I struggle with digital planning as well. There's too much temptation to just move the tasks around and never actually complete them. So yeah, my choice is always a bound notebook. But obviously, if you lack the flexibility of moving things around, maybe try a ring system, because I see a lot of people really enjoying that flexibility. It's personally not for me. Do you have a preference for certain brands or types of notebooks that you constantly use? I started with a local notebook brand for bullet journaling since they were affordable and they offered solid colored dot grid options. And I really liked them when I used them. Then I discovered Stalogy last year, and it was so good. If I was bullet journaling this year again, Stalogy would be my choice of notebook. They're pricier, but I think they are worth the investment. I actually considered one using this year for my reading journal, but then I thought I don't need another journal. I can just use my Hobonichi for that. So that's what we're doing, but I did consider getting a Stalogy this year as well. So I guess that's one of my favorite brands. Yeah, I'm very happy about Hobonichi for now. I am excited to use them. I haven't started using it in depth yet, obviously, but I will keep you updated. Okay, so the next part of the Q&A, I guess, is maintaining a journaling system. What strategies do you use to stay consistent with your journaling routine? Okay, staying consistent can be one of the hardest things about journaling, at least in my experience. I honestly tend to spiral if I miss a single day, but I think I'm getting a lot better. I think the key here is to remember that journaling shouldn't feel like a chore. It's not something that you have to do. Journaling is often portrayed as this amazing practice on the internet, but like it might not resonate with you, or the systems that you see on the internet might not work for you, and it's okay. I think it's very important to find a system that fits your needs, and I think it's also very important to only use the spreads that you think are necessary. If something isn't working, don't hesitate to change it. Embrace the fact that finding the right system can help journaling feel less like a chore. And if you miss a day, or even a week, honestly, you can just backfill it if you want to. But if you want to leave it empty, it's perfectly fine. Just get back into your journaling without the pressure. And if you're like too worried about leaving the page empty and skipping a day, maybe try undated notebooks. They might be a help for you. I personally didn't like them. I did try them, but that might work for you, so maybe give it a try. How do you deal with journal burnout, or when you feel unmotivated to keep up with the journaling system? Okay, so when I experience a journal burnout, it's usually because something isn't quite right in my journal. Often this is more about functionality than aesthetics. And it typically signals that I need to change something in my layout or adjust the things that are not working for me. However, I think it's essential to identify the root of this burnout or unmotivation and ask yourself if it's the journal itself or maybe it's a specific page that's causing the issue. Do you have any tips for organizing your thoughts within your journal so it doesn't become overwhelming? To me, my journal serves to keep my thoughts somewhat organized, which helps to quiet my mind. I'm not gonna lie, it does get overwhelming sometimes. For this reason, I prefer using separate notebooks. Like, my planner is only for planning. I write my tasks and my events, and I don't put any thoughts into that journal. While my memory keeping journal is for my thoughts and my random ramblings about anything. The only thing that I use to organize these entries is a key. I use a simple dot sticker sheet, I guess, to go back and reference them if I need to when I'm flipping through. I know that writing can be overwhelming, but I find that even if it's messy and if it's unorganized, it is better than letting thoughts just circle in my head. I need to get them on paper, and I don't care how messy they are. And like I said, the only thing that I use is a key. But for the spread itself, if it's messy, I don't really care. How do you integrate your journaling into your daily or weekly routine without it feeling like a chore? The only advice that I can give about this is make journaling easier and more enjoyable for yourself. Again, speaking from my own experience, I will give an example. When I first started bullet journaling, I created everything from scratch. I drew these amazing covers, or I tried to draw them. And then slowly, they became overwhelming. Over time, I simplified this approach, opting for a more minimalistic style with fewer pens and more stickers. I also started using stamps for headers. I tracked fewer things. I think this shift made journaling more appealing to me, and this is why I enjoyed it last year a lot more. It became a helpful routine rather than a source of stress for me. Again, everyone's experience is different. So if art is your outlet, embrace it and create those amazing covers, those amazing designs, and draw. It just wasn't for me. Another thing that helps is creating a cozy journaling space. I personally like to have a cup of tea or a coffee, depending on the time of the day. I like to have some candles, and a playlist, or maybe a podcast or a YouTube video. But just make that space cozy and appealing to journal. Do you ever adapt or change your journaling system throughout the year? And if so, how do you manage that transition? I never completely changed my journal before, because changing my journal before the year ends, as an idea, it feels a bit daunting, I'm not gonna lie. And I honestly just don't want to waste my money. However, I have modified my layout multiple times. While I can't really offer specific advice on the entire journaling system change, I believe that if you really want to overhaul your system, go for it. If I remember correctly, Lindsay Scribbles and Megan Rhiannon, I think, have shared videos about these experimenting transition. So maybe check their channels out. They might be helpful. Caitlin Gray, I think, also shared some videos about this. So maybe check them out, but I can't really be helpful when it comes to changing your journaling system, because that's not something that I usually do. Usually I just tweak the system that I have and see what works. What do you do on days when you feel like skipping journaling altogether? Honestly, I usually just skip that day and backfill later if I want to. In my planner, I don't often miss entries, well, quote-unquote entries, since I have tasks to complete anyways and I just put them in, or maybe an event. But in my memory keeping journal, it happens, and it's perfectly fine to take a break and return to your journal when you're ready. If you want to backfill, and if you don't, just continue where you left off. How do you handle catching up in your journal when you're fallen behind? When I need to catch up, I like to create a cozy environment for myself. Again, a cup of tea, coffee, depends, some candles, a playlist, a YouTube video, and I just sit down and journal as much as I want. I don't stress over it, and if I missed 3 days but I only want to journal one day, I just do that day. I make a conscious effort to avoid overwhelming myself during this process, so that it's easier for me to come back to if I need to in the future. Do you set aside time specifically for journaling into your day? I think, I was gonna say I prefer the flexibility, but I think I do a bit of both. I still think I do prefer flexibility because rigid planning doesn't really work well for me. However, I like to do my planning in the morning before I start my day, so I know what I'm doing. And I would usually journal or memory keep or commonplace, whatever I'm doing, in the evening to reflect on the day and kind of de-stress, at least for daily memory keeping. Now that I think about it, for commonplacing, I don't have a specific time, I don't think. I just write whenever I want to write, and if I need to print some things out, I usually wait so that they're ready as well. But yeah, I think that's how I do my journaling in a day, I guess. What tools or accessories, pens, highlighters, or stickers help you stay motivated and organized in your journaling system? Okay, so I primarily use one pen and a pencil when needed. Last year, I didn't use any highlighters or markers, but this year, I think I want to use maybe 3 colors for underlining and tagging things to make things easier for me. I really prefer keeping it simple when it comes to writing utensils, but I do love using stamps. I am not very sure how I will apply them to the Hopanichi notebooks yet, but I enjoy them, so I think I will find a way. The main motivators for me are my stickers. I love using stickers. I do use minimalistic stickers and I do use them minimalistically, but I just love using them. And I love going through my collection and finding a cute sticker that fits with the theme. Finding the right system is our last part actually. How did you discover the journaling and planning system that works best for you? Discovering the right journaling and planning system has been a journey of trial and error for me. I have tried different methods. I got inspired by creators on YouTube. Whenever I see something that I like, I give it a shot, but I adjust it to fit my life and my needs. I think the important thing here is that you try them and see if it works for you. Because if you want to find that quote-unquote perfect system, you just need to try as many things as you can and see what works and what doesn't. That's the only advice that I can give you, I guess. I know that I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but honestly, in my experience, that's what helped me, so. What signs indicate that a particular system isn't working and needs to be adjusted? A clear sign for me is when I find myself using my notebooks less frequently than I used to, or feeling stressed when I use them. Rather than overhauling everything like I mentioned, I usually just tweak a few things. But if I notice a page is constantly empty, that also tells me that I need to rethink how I'm using that space. How do you balance between structure and flexibility in your journaling system? Ooh, okay. Balancing this can be tricky for me still, because I do appreciate having a cohesive look across my pages, but I have also learned that being that structured with my journal can be a bad thing for my creativity. This year, I have made an effort to embrace a bit more flexibility while still maintaining that structure for a polished appearance. What I personally like to do is I like to use a single pen, like I mentioned, so the same pen. I use steps, which helped a lot because when I keep using the same tools, it does look structured. But if I have to change some things, if I have to change a page or a section in the page, things look a bit more cohesive because I'm using the same things, but it's not the same layout. What advice would you give to someone just starting out in journaling and planning, especially when they're unsure of what system to use? Okay, I have 2 advices. First, do not be afraid to change things up. Your journal is meant to serve you. So if something isn't working, do not hesitate to experiment with a different layout or a system. Start with small changes because notebooks can be pricey. So maybe start changing the section or the page. Try it for a while, and if it doesn't work, then change your notebooks. The second advice that I have is remember that mistakes are okay. If you misspell something, if you accidentally smudge a little word or something like that, it is okay. Just cross it out and continue. Or if you really want to cover up, use a sticker or a washi. If you have the same notebook, cut a piece of paper and stick it to where you made the mistake and continue. There's so many ways to make it work, so please, making mistakes is okay, and you can find a way to make it work. How do you experiment with different planning methods without getting overwhelmed or discouraged? I will again say the same thing, but I tend to stick with the same notebook for the entire year, unless I absolutely need to switch. This helps me to focus on making the most of what I have instead of feeling the need to start fresh constantly. So I'm making an effort to see what I can do to make that system work for me. It's also fun to kind of look back and see how my journal has evolved in a year, because I do make changes in a year, and at the end of the year I could go back and say, yes, this was something that wasn't working for me and I switched to this and it was working a lot better. How do you determine if you need a minimalistic or more detailed journaling system? Again, it comes down to trial and error. Initially, I tracked everything that I could track, but over time, I realized that keeping it simple was more sustainable for me, because when I have too much to track, I completely forget about tracking them because it's simply too much for me to remember. My style has also shifted from being very detailed to being more minimal, which again I found works best for me. It's less time consuming and I can focus on the things that I need to get done. So again, all you need to do is try different things and see what works for you. And this is our last question. How do you avoid getting caught up in perfectionism when experimenting with different journaling systems? This is still a work in progress for me. I do struggle with this, but I think I made a progress on learning how to find solutions instead of letting them discourage me. When things don't turn out perfectly, I remind myself that it's okay, and if I want to, I can cover them up and find a solution so that they're not visible on the page. But also, I learned that imperfections can add character to my journal, to my spread, making it more personal and more unique. Okay, that was all of the questions that I have. I hope that this video was helpful. I know that I talked about my experience, but honestly, I get inspired when I hear about people's experience and things. So I just thought that maybe this could help someone, and I wanted to share the video, because getting a planner and trying to set up that planner can be very stressful. At least to me, it was always very stressful. And I really, really enjoyed people explaining what they're doing and giving advice or sharing their experience on their own journals. So I wanted to do this little Q&A while I was journaling about my journal system for the next year. I hope you enjoyed it. If you journal along with me, I hope it was an amazing journaling session. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate every single one of you. We still have a bit left in the video, so I think I will put on some music and let you journal if you need to. Again, thank you so much for watching, listening, however you use the video. Thank you so much. It means the world to me. I hope this was helpful. And yeah, with that being said, I will see you in the next video. Bye everyone.